All right, gamers. In this episode, we're going to talk about developing your plot. Hey gamers, welcome back to Game Master's Dungeon. I am Brian, your Game Master, and in today's episode of GM Study Hall, we're going to talk about how I can help you write your plot for your chronicle or your campaign, depending upon what game you're playing, and also how to include subplots, and more subplots, and more subplots. We'll talk about why that's important in just a minute. If you like... Hey gamers, alright. So today, like I said, we're going to talk about developing your plot for your story. Why is this important? Well, your plot is basically going to be the bullet points of what's going to happen in your story. The beginning, up to the climax, the big showdown with the big villain or whatever it is, the big challenge is going to be met and hopefully overcome. And then we're going to go down to the resolution and how things kind of even back out to how they were in the beginning. So how do you go about writing a plot? Well, first you want to take a look at a diagram. It's called the Freytag's Pyramid. It was developed by Gustav Freytag. He was a German writer back in the late 1800s. He uses a 5-point system or a 5-step system, which we're going to detail now. So his first step is called the exposition. So the exposition is where you're going to, for role-playing purposes, right? You're going to introduce all of the player characters. You're going to introduce how they're all come together, why they're working together, their motivations, their personal goals. And also in the exposition is where you're going to introduce the villain or the adversary, the antagonist, and the challenges of what's going to have to take place in order to defeat or best this opposition. The second step is going to be what's called the rising action. This is going to be everything in the middle from once they find out about the antagonist or the villain or whatever you're using in your story, all the way up to the climax where they're going to face off against this opposition and hopefully overcome it. So everything in between that, from the beginning to when they fight the villain, that's the rising action is everything in between. Now this is where you're going to want to add in your subplots and more subplots, right? Really, you're going to want to look at how many game sessions you're going to want to run. If you're looking for just a short campaign, a handful of sessions, and then you're done, you won't add as many subplots. If you want a longer, long, drawn-out, in-depth campaign, you're going to add more subplots. What a subplot is like there's the overarching story, the main plot. Subplots are going to be these little offshoots. They're going to be related, but possibly somehow, to the main plot. But they're going to give characters a new challenge that they're going to need to overcome. Like if they leave it alone, it's going to fester and it's going to get bigger. They're going to want to deal with it. Now, one of the things that I would suggest is when you have your characters develop, you're going to want to get them to create backstories and histories and things like that. So this will be some great information that you can pull from in order to create these subplots. So you could make like some subplots about an individual character if you wanted to kind of give them some, a little bit of the limelight, their 15 seconds of fame. Then the other characters will go and help with them. Then, so you're going to get up to the climax. Okay, this is where you're going to face off against the villain. Whatever happens here, hopefully they overcome the challenge, the characters do. Make it something big, spectacular, wonderful, fireworks, all that kind of stuff. They're building up to this, the anticipation for the big fight. This is where it happens. Make it epic. Okay. Then on the backside of that is the falling action. This is all the actions and everything that's going to take place that's going to lead to the resolution. So we fought the villain, we've beat him. Now we're going to dismantle his organization, arrest his henchmen, that kind of stuff. Then you're going to fall off down into the resolution. This is where everything is resolved. The villain's put away, his organization is no more, his henchmen are off the street, the world is back to the way it was. the guy gets the girl or whatever, the riding off into the sunset, whatever, right? So that's the 5 steps. Now it seems really easy, but what I would do, I would get your paper out or a notebook and, detail what your climax is. That's what I kind of like to start with. Start with my climax. The big epic part of the campaign, and then you build down to the exposition. Then you build down to the resolution. That's how I like to do it personally. You may find other ways to be more beneficial to you, and I hope that works out for you. All right, gamers. So that was just a quick overview of the plot. Now, this is just to get you started. Think about those 5 steps as you're creating your plot and your story. Now, there's a lot of stuff we still have to cover: setting, mood, theme, plot devices, all this kind of stuff. So make sure you stay tuned to this, specifically to this series, if this is something you're interested in, because we're going to be covering all that stuff in future videos. So, until I see you again in the dungeon, I am Brian, your Game Master, and happy gaming.